Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
That was so funny.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fantasy Inferno. I am one of your dynamic trio, your host, Brad Menendez, and with me this week is Bryce Frazier, but we're missing a Sully. Instead, we get special guest Jake Wallman. Jake and Bryce, it's good to see you guys. Bryce, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Jacob?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be back. It's been way too long, and I love guest starring, if you want to call it that, on here. It's just fun to be here and talk fantasy football. I miss it.
Yeah. Well, it's always good having you on. I know that not everybody on YouTube gets to see, but behind the scenes, Mr. Wallman is a great helper. He helps put together a lot of the videos that you've been seeing over the last few months, and he's done an awesome job. So it's good to get him in front of the camera instead of just behind. Albeit I heard before.
I've only messed up a couple spellings.
What's that?
I said I've only messed up a couple spellings.
Well, I've messed up stats. I said Jonathan Taylor had speed. So, we all say things that are wrong. So tonight we're gonna do like we've been doing. We're gonna hit some news. We're gonna talk about what's going on. We're gonna help you guys out in the chat. So if you got questions, make sure you drop them in there. But we thank you guys as always for hanging out with us every night. Tuesday nights we've been live streaming. Wednesday nights in the off season we do 5 nights most weeks. So thank you guys for that. If as always, if you enjoy it, hit the like, subscribe, notification, all that stuff. Stay up to date with everything we got going on. Hit rotoheat.com for up-to-date articles and waiver wire stuff and IDP and Devy and rankings and all that good stuff. But now to the meat of the show. We got a lot of news and notes, so we're going to start with that. First and foremost, we've got some IR stuff going on. I saw that Corey Davis is put on COVID IR, so he'll be out for a couple weeks, which, he's been playing pretty hot this year. It looks like he might have finally had his Devontae Parker fifth-year breakout season this year. What do you guys make about that? And I'll start with you, Jake. How are you feeling now? Does that look like A.J. Brown's going to get more action, or is that a Jonnu Smith bump? Who does that help?
Yeah, I think it helps both of them. Humphries is a guy who, is their wide receiver 3 who I think last week even, and he's going to be on that COVID IR for, a couple weeks too. But yeah, I see, especially with a guy like Smith, he's going to get a big bump up in targets, I think, just because he's that big reliable guy, and A.J. Brown's more that, big threat where he doesn't get as many reliable targets, but he gets those big targets down the field. So I would look for Smith to get that uptick.
What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I think it definitely benefits both of them. I hope it benefits both. I have a lot of shares of Jonnu Smith, and I like A.J. Brown a lot. I think A.J. Brown doesn't want to be just a big play receiver, though. I think he has the talent to be, a possible elite tier. He might be a little too young, not in the league long enough, but I don't think he's dependent on those big plays. He just happened to get him on his touches last year, and that would mean he was a rookie. So, a lot of rookies don't get a ton of volume, but he just capitalized on the volume that he got. So hopefully we can see him be more consistent week in and week out, not just kind of that big play guy.
Awesome. Well, let's hope you guys are right.
Right.
We did see that Lamar Jackson missed practice today with a knee injury, so you got to be careful. Obviously, we know a lot of veterans get Wednesdays off, just kind of recuperate and just get some extra rest. But something to note, the legs are a big part of Lamar's game. Looking through the notes here, Kalen Ballage is visiting the Chargers. For some of you that didn't know, he was on the Jets, not on the Jets anymore. They released him this week, and he's now visiting LA, which takes us to our next conversation piece of news. Obviously, we know Eckler's on IR. What do you guys make of that backfield? Is it the Josh Kelly show, or are we going to see Justin Jackson? Do you see a vet coming in and helping out? Bryce, what do you think is going to happen there now while Eckler's on IR?
I think that we already started to see it, and it's Josh Kelly. I think Justin Jackson will come in there, but I think that instead of just kind of handing Eckler's part to Jackson. They're going to give Josh Kelly what he's already been getting and some, and then get the other guy as the third down back. So I think it definitely improves Kelly's opportunity. He's been kind of like that star that nobody really thought of this offseason so far this year. So I just bought him in one league because I'm thin at RB. So I'm hoping that he kind of takes over that production. I don't think either of them is talented as Austin Eckler, especially out of the backfield. So you can't expect him to be nearly as efficient with the amount of touches he gets, because Eckler's not a guy that touches the ball, especially when all the running backs are healthy, 25 times a game, where now I can see Kelly getting 25 touches or at least around that. What do you think, Jacob?
I think the Chargers running backs are kind of going to walk with a limp, because I'm just not super sold on either of them being the guy there. And so I do think that, it's going to be a running back by committee. I've been doing the rise and fall rookie articles, and so I've been following Joshua Kelly like really closely. And I really like him a lot. But I think he's gotten a ton of opportunity, which has been huge for him in fantasy. But there have been times where he hasn't done much of anything with it. He's kind of gotten like a touchdown to bail him out sometimes and whatnot. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kelly started off as, the 1A, but Justin Jackson became that 1A after, a week or two.
Well, the interesting thing is the Chargers get the Saints coming up this weekend, so that'll be an interesting test for them. We know that obviously the Detroit game wasn't really any good showing of what running backs can do against the Saints, but the Saints defense hasn't been the Saints defense of old recently, but they get the Saints, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jags, like all of a sudden you could see Kelly or Jackson, whoever kind of takes that lead, be really fantasy relevant for the next month because the games are just soft. I mean, you're facing defenses that you can run on and do it well. So Kelly, if he gets a lot of opportunity, could become very fantasy relevant for the next month. But my hope is that Eckler comes back, because Eckler is kind of the man there. Kelly's not Eckler.
Yeah.
Kelly and Jackson together aren't Eckler. So,
And I think too, just something else I was just thinking about is, it could be like a Brown Henderson situation. I know Brown, I think he went on IR.
He came
today.
back. He was back this last weekend, but he was out for a few weeks.
Okay, but kind of where like one hits big one week and then a disappearing act the next week, and then the other one hits big, and so I think it could be one of those situations too. So maybe not a reliable starter, but it might be one of those things where they could win you the week if you slide them in their flex and they drop 25 out of nowhere. So
especially with all the injuries that have been going on to the running back, I mean, it's a perfect time for a rookie to really step up. Think about a team like Washington. So Washington's got a lot going on. They benched Dwayne Haskins today in favor of Kyle Allen. Antonio Gibson's kind of been showing out some here. What's your guys' take on Gibson, on Kyle Allen? How do you feel about those two pieces, this weekend and moving forward? Jake, I'll start with you.
I mean, it's definitely an upgrade. Dwayne Haskins is, as much as I'm an Ohio State guy, I was never sold on him being a starter in the league. So I think Allen is going to help Antonio Gibson out a lot, just for the fact that, Allen came from Carolina, where, Christian McCaffrey was, and he just loved to dump the ball off to CMC. So I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously Gibson's not close to the running back or receiver as CMC, but he's probably going to get a lot of looks like that, especially with how poor that Washington offense is. He's going to look to just kind of dump and let Gibson do the work.
What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, so, I think I'm an Ohio State fan too, and even though how terrible we are, we weren't blind to Dwayne Haskins' He wasn't a quarterback that I don't think anybody thought should come right into the league and start. He'd be more of a guy to sit behind someone or just be almost a reliable backup, kind of like a Jacoby Brissett kind of guy through his career. Maybe he gets lucky from an injury and he gets to start and gets the opportunity to get paid somewhere. But I'm not sure what it does for Antonio Gibson because that Washington offense, other than Terry McLaurin, is not very fun to watch. They're just not a good team. And if Antonio Gibson gets a lot of action out of the backfield, like Jake was just talking about Kyle Allen, dumping it to him, then it definitely skyrockets his value just for PPR formats. Kyle Allen, to me, I thought it was weird because I don't think he played that bad last year for Carolina just to kind of say, we don't want to move forward with you. We want to go with Teddy Bridgewater because he didn't seem like he was that bad. I thought he could go on some other teams and possibly compete for a starting spot. So, but maybe, I'm not an NFL scout. So, I think that he's going to be an upgrade, and I think it's definitely good for all the receivers in Washington, but I don't think anybody cares much other than Terry McLaurin. So, and I've got a lot of shares of him, so I'm hoping that transition to quarterback improves his value.
Yeah. Well, my hope for Washington is Kyle Allen gives them consistency. Gibson is a guy that I like. As coming out as a rookie, I liked him, and he's in his rookie year still, obviously. But they seem to use J.D. McKissic in that pass catcher role, so I'm a little nervous on the PPR side of things that Gibson might have kind of a capped fantasy output if he's not used as the pass catcher. Especially this week, they face L.A. Aaron Donald's kind of a big deal, so he's not running on him very easily and very often. So it'll be interesting to see. After this week, their schedule gets considerably easier. Giants, Dallas, Giants. So after that, things will look better for him. But this week will be tough. It'll be a lot of dumping off. So I could see McKissic having another big week if they drop the ball off to him quite a bit.
To Bryce's point, just about you said we're talking about Kyle Allen being like decent last year. He actually did finish this. I think the QB 20. Which for a guy who just kind of stepped in, it's pretty solid.
Right. So before we move on to the next bit of news, we got lots of questions coming in. Connor asks, should I trade Joe Mixon for Derrick Henry in a full PPR league?
No, please don't.
Yeah, I mean, he had a big breakout week this week, but everybody knew Mixon was going to blow up. Once this offense gelled. So, what were you saying, Bryce?
I said, yeah, eventually. I mean, we were talking about. I think Rick posted it several times, and everyone's mentioned it. Last year, Mixon started off horrible, and even though he started off horrible this year, it was better than how he started last year, and he ended up amazing the last half of the year. Joe Mixon is a great running back and just not a very good situation. But Rick pointed it out, I think, in yesterday's stream, or maybe he just talked to me personally. But what they did was the Bengals finally started spread it, trying to work the ball downfield, which made everything less condensed there in the middle and in the box. So that had opened it up for Mixon. The dude's a top 5 talent, just with the worst offensive line in the league. So.
And they're going to get better. I mean, I've watched all their games so far this season, and man, Burrow's fun to watch. He moves that ball well, and he's going to make Mixon and Higgins and Boyd. I mean, they're all going to be fantasy relevant now. And Burrow's, it's amazing to see the turnaround, even with a crappy offensive line.
Right.
Anything you want to add, Jake?
He's got back-to-back 300-yard games, so the dude's going to be a stud. Yeah. But kind of to the point of Mixon, that's a no-brainer just, for the fact that Bryce was saying, the O-line, because I was a guy who had a share of Saquon. Talk about a guy who was literally a 1 or 2 pick, but if you have a bad offensive line, you can't really do much about that. So it's not necessarily the player's fault. But yeah, I'm sticking with Joe Mixon all day.
Absolutely. Sam asks, who do I start at my flex? Gibson, Lamb, or Juju? Bryce.
Lamb. I think that's a good problem to have. But the way the Cowboys are using CeeDee Lamb, I wouldn't be surprised for him to end up as their most productive receiver. And that's going to be hard to do with Amari Cooper because he just came off a heck of a game too. But CeeDee Lamb's on the field all the time, and that dude he's good. So
You think Juju against Philly is a bad matchup?
I don't think it's necessarily a bad matchup. I know Juju had a good first couple of games, but I'm going to have to say last year he proved me right when I said I don't think he's ready for the number one wide receiver spot. And he's still young. People don't even get it. He's been in the league, year 3 now, and he's 22, maybe just turned 23. The dude is the age of most rookies at this point in his career. So I still don't know if he's quite ready for that spot. And I think that the Steelers might be winning that game pretty easily, where the Cowboys defense is so bad they might have to score 40 points every week. No offense. That division's so bad.
Philly definitely looks like they're not in sync with the offense and the defense. I mean, it all looks bad.
Division, though. First in the division.
I'm 2-1.
With losing record, first in the division. You probably should turn your hat around. You don't want people to know that you're a big Eagles fan. They ain't looking at, first in the division when you're losing record is kind of terrifying. I mean, I was kind of leaning Juju. I'm okay with Lamb. I would lean Juju just because he's their number one receiver and should be their first target. But that doesn't mean anything because they could easily be running on Philly because for some reason, I don't know why, Philly, I think their defense, their line is the best attribute of that defense, but their line just hasn't looked as good against the run this year, which is really surprising. Mm-hmm. So you could be right. They could be running the ball a lot just to run the clock out. So Juju at the flex might not be the sexiest move. We know Dallas is going to be throwing all day because that defense is a sieve. I mean, everything's getting through right now. So you guys go Lamb, I'll go Juju, Sam, and there you go. Or Jake, did you say Juju or Lamb? Who would you say?
I said Lamb.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. I
think he has a higher ceiling than Juju. I think Juju will get you, 10 to 15 points pretty easily. But I think Lamb has that high ceiling of getting you 20 plus.
There you go, Sam. 2 against 1. So I guess Lamb gets it. Nathan asks, should I trade OBJ for Metcalf? He'd be getting Metcalf. I would do it.
Well, yeah.
I'd do it in a heartbeat. Metcalf is Terrell Owens without the diva personality. Like, he's just so dominant.
And, I mean, look at their quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, that too. OBJ finally is starting to put it together, so if you can get something really good for him, I'd do it. As much as I like OBJ's talent is there.
Oh, for sure.
But he's just in the wrong spot. So, if you can get Metcalf, I'd do it. So.
Plus, Jarvis Landry looks like he's, almost back to 100, if not back to 100.
He's definitely the best quarterback on their team. All right, so back to news and notes. But if you guys got questions, pop them in the chat. We'll get them answered. Bucks have ruled out Chris Godwin, LaShawn McCoy, Justin Watson versus the Bears. Evans and Miller are questionable. Leonard Fournette is doubtful. So fire up all your Rojo shares so you can get, 3 yards of carry. That'll be an interesting game because the Bears still, they're undefeated, but man, they're a team that could easily be, 0-4. So
no, they just lost.
Go ahead.
Didn't they just lose?
Yeah, they're 3-1.
They did. Yeah, they did lose.
They lost to the Colts.
They lost to the Colts, which they should not have. The Colts do not look very good. So, what do you think about this game? Do you guys feel good about starting some of these guys on this in this game? What's your take on this game, Bryce?
So obviously, as a Patriot fan, I absolutely love Tom Brady, and it was good to see him get 5 touchdowns this last week. But it's not saying much when he gets it. Who did they play again? They didn't play a very good team.
They faced the Chargers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Chargers, and their secondary is beat up. Correct. Right.
Right.
So, I think this will be a good test because the Bears' defense is good and they don't allow a lot of touchdowns. They allow field goals a lot. It seems like teams can drive it on them, but they can't finish. So the Bears are a bend, don't break kind of defense. It'll be interesting to see if Tom Brady, even though some guys are out, you still got Mike Evans. It seems like Scottie Miller's still active, right? You said Watson's out, right? Okay. So you got Scottie Miller.
Mike Evans and Miller are questionable, so they'll probably go as long as they're all right.
Yes. If all of them are out, then that would be real interesting to see how he produces. But it seemed like Scottie Miller was definitely another go-to guy, and he's still got both tight ends, even though it looks like he's utilizing O.J. Howard a lot more. I don't care about any of the running backs.
Howard, yeah.
Oh yeah, did he? O.J. Howard went on IR too.
Yeah, so
He's out for the season, torn Achilles.
yeah, it's the
Oh my
Gronk show
God.
again.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't even. I that's one I missed. It's hard to keep up with all of them. Yeah, I think this game will be kind of it's not like too of an exciting a game to watch, but there's a lot of fantasy relevant players on both teams. I feel like so. I'm interested to see what Brady does against the defense.
For sure.
Jacob, what about you?
I think I was watching something earlier today where they were talking about Mike Evans and how he's been playing, but you can tell he's hurt. And I think that's why we've seen good production in the red zone, because I think he's been turning it on in the red zone, but kind of walking with a limp, like looking to draw those, pass interferences and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So I think he's a guy who, obviously, if he's healthy, you're going to start him. But I think a sneaky one could be Scottie Miller. I think he's just been a very consistent, like double-digit point kind of guy, and especially with Godwin out and I guess most of the pass-catching backs, they're going to look to go downfield. And I don't know. I think Cam and Bray could have a chance to find some fantasy relevance and maybe become a streamer. But he's a guy who I'd really just keep my eye out on, because I know in one of my leagues I am really desperate for a tight end, and so he's a guy who I'm just going to keep my eye on.
Yeah, I mean, one of these tight ends will step up, and we know the Bears, their defense is stingy, but tight ends can get through. We know Mo Ali Cox got a touchdown and 30, 40 yards last week. So there's opportunity for tight end to be relevant this week from Tampa. The unfortunate thing is you're going to have to guess which one. Gronk doesn't look like Gronk. Is Cameron Bray healthy enough to go to take over? Man, that's a tough one. It's a coin flip for me. If you're really desperate at tight end, I'd probably lean Gronk just because of the history, but that'll probably bite you. That'll probably be a waste. So it's like, yeah, history only goes so far when you're not who you used to be. Okay, so Taki asks, he's desperate for running back help. Should he trade Juju for Kenyon Drake? He's very deep at wide receiver. Jacob.
I would need more on top of Drake. I love Drake, especially coming into the season. I was like a Drake truther of like, this man is going to be, has top 5 potential. But he's just, yeah, right. He just didn't look, he hasn't looked like he did last year, just for those, final stretch of games. And so, of course, there's the potential for that to happen, for him to like finally break out and whatnot, and kind of come into his own again. But I would need more on top of Drake, even if it's just a little upgrade somewhere else. But if you're that deep at wide receiver, I could understand why you would go after a guy like Drake, and I wouldn't, knock you for it.
What about you, Bryce?
So right now in the season, I would need a little more context because obviously this is a redraft stream. So I'm thinking redraft. And in redraft and you're deep at wide receiver, yeah, I guess why not? But if it was like dynasty or even in redraft, I think right now in the season, Kenyon Drake is a buy low and Juju Smith-Schuster is a sell high guy. So I wouldn't do that because I think you could get more out of Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, you probably ask me, well, what do you think I could get? Right now, I have to think about it. But, for example, in one league, a dynasty league, I just traded Juju Smith-Schuster for Josh Kelly and Justin Jefferson. And I thought that was a pretty good return. And I'm also kind of banking on Juju not getting the touchdowns he's been getting so far in the games he's played this week. But overall, I guess my answer is no, because I think you could do better or make him add a decent backup wide receiver in case one of your guys get hurt, or if you're weak there, you can stream some guys. You said you're deep, but I think you could still do better than Drake the way he's playing right now this season. I'm not sold that he just doesn't look that good. That offense doesn't look that good, to be honest. So no, I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't either. the tough thing is Edmonds is probably a much cheaper get, and he's I think like wide receiver 36 or running back 36 or 37, where Drake's like in the 30s as well. So it's like,
Right.
what's the difference at this point? As much as I loved Drake as well, I like Chase Edmonds. I think he's a nice gadgety type running back that can get you PPR value. So I would look elsewhere unless you can get something really sweet to add to that deal. I would rather keep Juju and then just try to find out. The tough thing is that you're starting to get to the point where so many of the top 12 running backs are hurt right now. It's like, who are you going to go after? So
Right.
Saquon, CMC, and all these guys are down and hurting, and some of them may come back, but it's going to take time for them to get back up to speed and get their body and ready for game action. It's like, you're probably having to send Juju for kind of a mid RB2 type player, and it's like, maybe you get lucky and the Kareem Hunt owner has a bunch of running backs. Maybe you can go after Kareem Hunt,
Yeah.
who will be insanely attractive for the next month or so because he was already a playable running back before this. So,
And I think another guy like for Juju would be like Miles Sanders. Again,
Yeah.
kind of in a bad situation, but a very talented back who is, will put up decent numbers even on his bad weeks, but has that high ceiling again, especially if that offense gets figured out.
if they can
Yeah.
get it back
That'd
together,
be
for
someone
sure.
I would definitely do it for.
So Reese asks, start Scottie Miller or Cole Beasley? Bryce.
For this week, since Chris Godwin's out and OJ Howard is out, I'm going to go Scottie Miller.
Yep, I agree. What about you, Jake?
I am going to look. Do you know who the Bills are playing this week?
Yes, me too fast. Tennessee.
To Tennessee.
Tennessee.
That'll be a tough one.
Yeah. I think
that should be a good game.
I feel like you could really go either way.
Yeah, I think Miller can get higher volume just because of all the people that are out in Tampa.
Yeah.
But Chicago's defense is solid, so maybe Cole Beasley moving around in the slot could get you some nice targets as well. I mean,
yeah,
I'd lean Miller, but I could make the case either way.
So I was just looking at the stats, and Chicago's defense against wide receivers is 5th, but Cole Beasley in Tennessee is 4th. So I was leaning Scottie Miller, but now it's like a sure thing. Like I'd rather have him,
For sure.
especially with Godwin out.
Yep. All right, so there you go, Reese. PJ Fleck says, I traded Brandon Ayuk, Darrell Henderson, and Akers for Diggs. How do you guys feel about that trade, Jake?
I think if you're deep, I think that's a really good trade just because of the fact that, Diggs and Josh Allen are just best friends right now and are just feeding off of each other. So I really like that. I'm also a guy who I'll trade a lot of good players for one great player. And I'll just continue to, scout the waiver wire to pick up more, decent, good players and then trade them for great, a bunch of them for great players. And so I've always loved that strategy. So I'm all for the Diggs trade here.
What about you, Bryce?
Yeah. If it's redraft, you killed it in the Diggs side. If it's dynasty, I think that trade could actually be pretty even. If one team's on a pretty rebuild, those are some nice young pieces. And if you're trying to compete, Diggs can definitely give you that edge. So it just depends. Redraft, you killed it. If not, it's pretty even to me.
Yeah. And the tough thing is Ayuk's been big, but Debo's now back, so that's gonna look a little different. Go ahead.
But I think having Debo back could help Ayuk some. I think I was just writing about that yesterday. But I kind of like that because it's kind of one of those things where it's like, the AB and Juju, like with AB taking up, those main guys, those top cornerbacks, like Juju was freed up to have the secondary guys. So I think that could help him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I think if this is redraft, I think the Diggs is the better side because he's a more elite player this season. Long term, Henderson doesn't mean much to me, but Akers and Ayuk I think could be nice pieces for a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, so over on Facebook, we got somebody who's in a 12-team Superflex tight end premium, half-point premium. He's got Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, and Daniel Jones. Should he be trading Daniel Jones? And what would you target trading somebody like Daniel Jones? Because this is Superflex. So Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones. Should you trade Daniel Jones? Bryce.
So there need to be a lot more context, I feel like, because it's always nice to have three quarterbacks in this super. This has got to be a dynasty question because you don't see redrafts built like this. So I'm assuming this is a dynasty question, and I would be actively shopping him, but I wouldn't sell for cheap unless I was hurting bad somewhere else. So like right now, I would go find the guy who had Haskins and see if that was a starter. And see if he's going to be desperate for a quarterback. And Daniel Jones looks like, well, I don't know. He doesn't look good this year. So who knows if he's the quarterback for the future for the Giants. But I would be actively trying to shop him only because the way he's playing this year, I don't know how bright his future really is. I know he's missing a key piece in Saquon Barkley, and that definitely hurts any offense that has a player of that caliber, especially the quarterback position. So, yeah, I would trade him, but for who, I would have to see the rest of your team. Yeah. Jacob?
Yeah, I think from the dynasty aspect, you're like right on. You definitely want to be actively shopping him. I have him, and I am actively shopping him. And
right.
But at the same time, I'm not going to give him up for free. He's been garbage, but he's still young. There is still, that hope. But from a redraft look. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely actively shopping him, and, I'm going to get something that, is even solid. Like, I was thinking about a guy like Logan Thomas is a guy with, who could see an uptick in production with a guy like Kyle Allen too. So, even going after a guy like him and, something small or whatnot, that could be, an avenue to go if you're, if you need help at the tight end position.
Yeah, making a trade for a guy who's low right now, value-wise, the words aren't good when it comes out about Daniel Jones right now. Like, I don't tend to try to sell guys on the cheap, so I would tell you to hold him unless somebody's willing to pay you fair market value, which right now he's not worth fair market value because the team is trash. So it's like, it's one of those, if you sell them low, if you're desperate and you're a contender and you need this specific type of player, well, if you can get them to bite on that, then, sell them. But I wouldn't sell too cheap. I had a non-Superflex league where I had Daniel Jones, and I was trying to make kind of a larger deal, and the guy wanted Daniel Jones in the package, so I was able to ship him. Like, if you can do that to get something really nice, great. But, yeah, I'd be careful not to sell yourself short. He's still a starting quarterback in Superflex. Those are still worth a fair price. He's young. Maybe that team turns it around if they get a new GM and a new head coach and they finally start to do things right. Maybe he gets...
And a new O-line.
Yeah, and a new O-line. Although the funniest thing is, what do they got? Like 3 first-round offensive linemen on the team right now, and they're still not any good. I mean, it's like...
I know.
How many more are you going to draft before you realize you didn't pick the right ones? So good luck. Hopefully that helps you do something good with your team. Hayden asks, do I trade David Johnson, Tyreek Hill, Damien Harris, and the Bears defense? So David Johnson, Tyreek Hill, Damien Harris, and the Bears for Josh Jacobs, Julio, and the Ravens. I'll start with you, Jacob. What do you think?
Go over that one more time.
So, David Johnson, Tyreek Hill, Damien Harris, and the Bears D. And on the other side, he'd be getting Josh Jacobs, Julio Jones, and the Ravens.
I'm going to go Tyreek side just for the fact that, again, I'm not super sold on Julio being healthy this year. I think this is going to be – he's been healthy for most, of his career. Minus, a couple years and years ago. And he usually, plays through injury really well. But like this year has been different. And he's, even before he got hurt, he seemingly was looking to take a back seat to Ridley, which a lot of people, thought that was going to happen. I was not one of them, so now I'm eating my words. But like Tyreek's a guy who's on a 4-game touchdown streak. And Jacobs, had an incredible week 1, but hasn't been involved in the pass game like he was in week 1, and hasn't been, as productive in that sense. He's still been a good runner. But if it's PPR, I mean, you're going to need a running back who catches the ball. And so obviously he's an upgrade over David Johnson, but not enough for Tyreek. And, again, the Ravens defense is great. I have them, I have a share of them. But again, it's just not enough for me.
Yeah, I struggle with this one because really it comes down to Tyreek and Jacobs, So Hayden, it depends on what your need is. With so many injured running backs, I'd kind of lean towards Jacobs just because you have an RB1. But it really comes down to those two. I think Julio, when he's on the field, is nice, going to get you, low-end wide receiver 1 type numbers, where Tyreek's going to give you super high-end wide receiver 1 numbers. But Jacobs is going to give you better consistent production than David Johnson and Damien Harris. Damien Harris is coming back from injury. You don't know if he's really going to be the guy just because he looked good before the season started. So I'm not sold on Damien Harris, but I'm also not sold on any runner on that team until they leave that team. Like if Sony Michel leaves New England, I'm a buyer all day because I love Sony Michel and any other team he'd probably get. So, Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, so I like that you're almost like trying to capitalize on selling Damien Harris, but I think you might be giving up too much. It's hard because, like you said, that Julio injury is really bugging me. If Julio is 100% healthy, I'm taking that side pretty easily right here because David Johnson. He's good. I like him as a running back too this year. Damien Harris might be a flex play that is going to be super inconsistent because the running back situation there is extremely frustrating to watch as a fan. I like Josh Jacobs. He gets used a lot, and I like Julio. So I would do a little more research on Julio's, injury, but I think I'm going to lean more to the Jacobs and Julio side. Sony Michel is the best running back on my team, and when you watch him play, on that big breakout run that Damien Harris had, Sony Michel would have scored. He's faster than that, and he would have 100% scored. He ran 7 times for 100 yards against the Raiders, and they just take him out. It was like watching J.K. Dobbins run all the way down the field on Clemson, and then they try and throw it 3 times in the end zone with Justin Fields and get stuffed. That's what it felt like watching. So yeah, I don't want any part of Harris. I think you're trading a flex player, an RB2, and an RB1 for an RB1 and or a wide receiver 1 for an RB1 and a wide receiver 1. So I'm going to take the 2 ones all day.
Yeah, and defenses I tend to stream.
That's even though.
Yeah, it's a good.
I think it's an even trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. But Hayden, I agree with Bryce on this one. I'd probably go Jacobs just because with the running back market the way it is right now, you need a surefire RB1.
Yeah, a consistent guy.
Over on Facebook, they're asking, do we think Eno Benjamin's going to get any play this year? Probably not.
Probably not.
He didn't. He came in. He was going to need some refinement, and I just don't see him really getting on the field much unless injuries happen. What do you think, Bryce?
And even
go ahead, Jake.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I was just saying, like, even then, we were just talking about Chase Edmonds and like how he's a stud, and so, I think if Drake is injured or Drake gets benched, like he's just going to step in, and Benjamin might see a few touches here and there, but Edmonds would be the bell cow at that point.
Yeah, I think I could see it very similar to how Tampa's using Keyshawn Vaughn. Like he kind of gets mop-up duty. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. The way Drake's playing right now, it's almost like David Johnson looked like last year. So, and they had the opportunity to have Chase Edmonds be their lead back, but they brought in an outside guy. Maybe, Benjamin has the opportunity to take that role, but I'm not going to bet money on it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Odds are he won't, but you never know with how this season's going.
It's only week 5.
Especially for running back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cher is asking, once Mostert comes back, does he take back over as a primary back, or or despite the fact that McKinnon's been really playing well, or what do you think is going to happen with that San Francisco running back group? Bryce?
Yeah, I think Mostert comes back and he takes over his role. You can tell. I mean, Jerick McKinnon looks, he looks all right running the ball. You can tell he doesn't look as good as Mostert, though. He's not nearly as explosive to the hole. He doesn't look as decisive. Jerick McKinnon is a third down back, kind of just playing that role for now. That offensive line is very good, so I feel like an average running back is going to do well behind them. So when Mostert comes back, I think that job says. Even when he does come back, though, I don't think, people think that he's going to see like a large workload because the 49ers run game is good, but I can still only see him getting around 15 touches, week in and week out with Jerick McKinnon getting a lot of action out of the backfield. So I like him more as a high-end running back, too, at max this year. Jacob?
Yeah, I'm the same. I like McKinnon a lot. I think he's a really good running back, and it's like a great comeback story. Just how he's been producing. But Mostert is a guy who's exciting. Like, he's a guy that you will actually watch. Like, if you have him on a fantasy team, you're like, this dude's gonna break off for just like a nasty play. And I think that that gets the team excited too. And so obviously he's gonna be the main player. But McKinnon's definitely gonna have his role, especially in the passing game.
Yep, I'd agree. Mostert's the man. McKinnon will have some action, and as long as he's healthy. Reese asks, Jonnu Smith or Dalton Schultz? Jake, we'll start with you.
Smith it's definitely Smith for me. Because again, with Corey Davis out, with Humphreys out, they're literally going to have Smith and Brown to pass to, and so Smith is going to get plenty uptick of targets. But I think Schultz in that such a pass-heavy offense, a guy like Cedric Wilson made himself semi-fantasy relevant, where he's now starting to get a decent amount of targets. So I just wouldn't rely on a tight end in Dallas right now. They have, he has a high ceiling. He can put up like crazy numbers if he gets the targets, but will he? Where Smith is going to, and he's going to give you that production that you want.
Yeah, what do you say, Bryce?
Yeah, I'm definitely going Jonnu Smith. It's Dallas is going to lead in a lot of categories this year. They're going to lead in yards against, points, and points against, more than likely. That's how bad their defense is and how high-powered their offense is. It's almost like I wish Jonnu Smith played for the Cowboys because he's a better talent than Schultz. But the way Ryan Tannehill loves Jonnu Smith, and with Corey Davis being out, he's the number 2 option right now. And he's the better athlete. So in all the games this year, he seems to produce pretty well on the targets that he gets. So I'm going to go with the guy that's consistent. And I don't really necessarily think his ceiling is much lower than Schultz. It might be a little bit just because, again, Dallas is going to score a lot of points every week, it seems like. But I'm still going to go with the guy that's more consistent with a little bit less ceiling.
Yeah. Smith has finally stepped into the tight end 1 role in fantasy, which he was destined to. Everybody liked him coming out, but he took his 3 years to develop like tight ends do. Schultz I like a lot, but unfortunately there's just so many options to move the ball to. It's like,
right.
It's hard to say that you can trust him every week, although so far every week he's played, he's been very playable and giving you good production. So you can't really go wrong, but Smith is definitely the guy I'm going with just because he's the true tight end 1. All right, so over on YouTube, he traded Antonio Gibson and Justin Jefferson for DeAndre Hopkins. It's a standard scoring league, and he had Ridley, Sharks, Slayton, Judy, and then at running back he had Taylor, Sanders, Kelly, Harris, Lindsey. Is that a good trade, trading Gibson and Jefferson for Hopkins, Jake?
Yeah. It seemed like he was pretty solid at running back, even giving up Gibson. And so why not go out and get a guy who is leading the league in targets? And I feel like in everything, the dude is a stud. Like, that offense is terrible, and he's still just balling out.
Yeah.
So he is a guy who is, team proof, matchup proof, every proof possible. And he's a guy who, no matter what, is going to give you production, where the other guys can be hit or miss. So that's easy for me.
Yep, I agree. That was a no-brainer for me. Get an elite player for a couple
Steal.
of good young guys. All right, so Rob Sullivan over on YouTube asks, "Who do I start this week?" He's lost Tannehill, which you may not.
He can start questions if he's on the stream.
Right. So who are you guys starting? Phillip Rivers or Kirk Cousins? Bryce.
Who are the Colts playing?
The Colts.
I never. And who the Vikings playing? These are guys who almost look at the matchup.
So the Colts are facing the Brownies, and the Vikings are not facing the Lions because the Lions are run by they face the Seahawks. You can throw on the Seahawks though. We watched the Dallas.
They have the 31st.
Yeah.
They're 31st
against quarterbacks. The worst.
Those are both quarterback-friendly games.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kirk Cousins against the Seahawks. 100%. They're gonna be losing that game for sure. I bet Dalvin Cook's gonna run and catch a lot. I think that's gonna be I feel like every game the Seahawks play this year is gonna be like every game the Cowboys play. It's gonna be pretty exciting. Even though last week it was kind of a low-scoring game for the Seahawks game against, weirdly enough, the Dolphins, but that game should be exciting. A lot of offensive power for sure. I'll go with Kirk.
Yeah, I'd go Cousins as well. That should be a pretty. Now that Minnesota looks like their offense is starting to get it a little bit. So
yeah, Justin Jefferson opened it up. Looks like.
Yeah.
So
he really
and
did.
I think the Colts have, they lost Campbell, who was turning into their number one guy, and Hill hasn't looked the same, and so just you have to look at the weapons too.
Yeah, Pascal is looking okay. He wasn't I was watching him last week because I had him. It's like he seemed like he would get open, but Phillip Rivers could not get it to where
Phillip is
throw
he
goes like this. He just does it so weird.
Throwing a brick.
He's definitely past. He's Drew Brees level. It's time to be done, sir. You just need to.
Go. It's hard to watch.
All right, so Robert Woods or Debo Samuel.
Robert Woods.
Easily Robert Woods for me.
Yeah, that's simple.
Although I do love Debo, I would not be.
Yeah, if he starts producing consistently, then I could see it being something harder to. But right now, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are pretty easy starts for the Rams wide receivers.
Oh. Yeah. All right. So Kellis Talks asks, would you trade Watson, Mixon, and Moore for Lamar?
No, absolutely not.
Not even close. Lamar is really nice, but Watson is really nice as well. It's number 2 and number 3. I'm not giving all that to move one.
Heck no. More right now is a buy low candidate too. 100%.
Yeah, you get him for sure. Would you trade Michael Thomas for Stefan Diggs and DJ Moore? That's a tough one.
Hey, that's a good offer, yeah.
So if this is a redraft league, yes, for sure, because Michael Thomas is still hurt, and if he comes back healthy, what's this look like with Drew Brees and the offense, whatever. Dynasty, I would be. It's fair, but
man, that's a good trade.
I probably would still take DJ Moore and Diggs just because you're getting 2 nice wide receivers, and Michael Thomas isn't that much better than Diggs. So, what do you think? What do you think?
I'm staying Michael Thomas just for the fact that I know I can get more. I know that I can get more, just because he's so good that once he comes back, all he needs is one stellar game, and people are gonna start drooling over him again, and giving up the world. So I'm hanging on to him at this point.
I don't. It's so easy.
I know he's QB proof, but he's only had Teddy Bridgewater, who's good, and Drew Brees throwing to him, who's obviously an all-time great. So you just have to hope that they don't have. I mean, next year he's got Jameis Winston, I guess, or not necessarily next year, but possibly could have Jameis Winston real soon. Who's the man, the 30 for 30. So I don't. I mean, his value still is going to be high with Jameis, so it's even.
He got LASIK done. Our boy can see now. He sees. You are now seeing an elite quarterback.
He should have got Defensive Player of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year.
Brendan asks, Jefferson or Shark in the flex? Ooh.
Man.
I'm probably going Shark.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jacob?
It's a good flex.
Yeah. Genuinely, I think it's pretty even. Like, both of them have the ability to pop off, and both of them are going to get targets. I think I'm going to go more so Chark just because I think Minshew is just, like, in love with Chark and just is going to, like, continue to feed. So I think I know he's going to get more targets. So I'd go Chark for that reason. But I think you can't really go wrong with either.
Yeah, they both should produce.
Jefferson does have a juicy matchup, though, to be fair. So
who's he play?
They play
the Seahawks.
So that's
true. That's true.
Yeah, I'd go Chark just because he's the number one option there.
Yeah.
All right. Reese asks, Matt Ryan or Drew Brees? I'm going Matt Ryan easily on that one. Yeah. Because albeit Atlanta's over, he at least is good.
Matt Ryan's been like the best late round QB. Like once you let everyone take all the good quarterbacks, Matt Ryan always drops to you. He is the best quarterback. I swear I've had him in redraft almost every year for the past 8 years, and he always
QB1.
It's so consistent. So I'll take him all day there.
I love our boy Rob Sullivan, who loves himself some Minnesota Vikings, but hates himself some DJ Shark. He hasn't said that. That's my opinion, but he does bring up that Shark has had only 4 good games in his career, where Justin Jefferson's already had 2. He'd roll with Justin Jefferson. Maybe a little purple bias, but we won't hold it against him. I mean, Jefferson's had 2 good games in his short career, so. I think ultimately both of these former LSU wide receivers are very good options this week. So as we get ready to close show out, we got 5 minutes left. I do want to hit on, we've got one potential RB1 type running back coming off IR this week, maybe. Lev Bell looks like he's coming back to practice. What do you guys make of Bell coming back? Do you think that, I know Sam Darnold's going to be out this week because of the shoulder and all those things. But do you think Bell has the opportunity to just kind of bounce back in and just kind of move into an RB1 type category? Because, well, what else do they got? Or what's your take on this, Jacob? Let me know what you think.
Well, first off, Joe Flacco's elite.
Show's over. This guy has no clue what's going on right now.
I always loved those comments back in the day, but I don't know. I think the Jets are just so bad. It's another one of those like Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley. I mean, they're so bad, but like Bell isn't half the running back that he was, and not even close to Mixon or Barkley. And so it's like bad team with a guy who's clearly, trending downward. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just not sold on him. I look at him as like a low end RB2, but I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like, the Jets' schedule isn't super sexy, especially because they're just not good. They got the Cardinals, then they got the Chargers, then they got the Bills, the Chiefs. I mean, it's not like he's got easy matchups. The Chargers' run defense is pretty solid. Bosa and Ingram and all these, they've got a lot of pieces. The Cardinals are softer, but he may not play this week, so it doesn't matter. But after that, then he's hitting the hard ones. He's got divisional games with the Bills and the Pats coming up. Dolphins, in November. But by then, Bell could be hurt again, or it's just irrelevant. So, Bryce, what's your take on the Jets?
Yeah, so the Jets, I mean, if you really think about their opponents, they probably have the hardest matchup against defenses in the division. The Bills and the Patriots defense are good, and the Dolphins defense is starting to look better. I mean, they just hindered Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson threw all over the Patriots. Again, it was Sunday Night Football or whatever at home, so it seems like players like him always play better in the spotlight like that. But I still like Lev Bell. Their running back situation is terrible, so he could easily walk in there, be the number one guy. My problem is with Adam Gase. I think that dude is terrible. I don't know how he has a job still. So yeah, I think he has the opportunity to come in and have PPR value because they're going to be losing all their games this year, and they're going to have to throw it. And it seems like he's the best back out of the backfield. And when I still watch Le'Veon Bell, he doesn't look that bad. It's hard to break 4 or 5 tackles just to get to the line of scrimmage. And he sometimes does it. So I feel like that guy in open space could still be extremely valuable. I look at him as a high, at the max being a low end running back 1 and more than likely just a mid to high running back 2 consistently. My question, though, guys, this is a good question, is now say the Jets lose all their game and they get first pick. What do they do with it? Do they trade it or do they trade Darnold? What do you think would be best for that organization?
Dude, if you don't get Trevor Lawrence, you're ridiculous.
Then what do they do? Trade Darnold?
Well, I think it's a Josh Rosen for Kyler Murray situation at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Where you're just like, I'm just going to go and get my guy, and if Sam Darnold's our backup, then shoot, we got a great backup.
You think throwing Trevor Lawrence in that situation is going to help them though? I mean, or do you think they should maybe build?
Well, you got
everywhere else is the problem. So, because I don't think any quarterback's going to be successful in that situation.
All right, so you got to remember this team is going to look different next year. They're going to have a new head coach and an entire team. There's no way they keep Adam like that.
Everyone thought that about Marvin Lewis, and that dude stayed there forever.
Yeah, Marvin Lewis actually got them to the playoffs a few times. Adam Gase has never. I don't know if he's even had a winning season as a head coach. He's just not good at his job. He's a great coordinator, terrible head coach. So they could potentially have a very different looking team. But Mekhi Becton looks like the real deal at left tackle. I mean, big force. They need to help work on that offensive line. C.J. Mosley might come back on the defensive side, but otherwise they're a young defense. Their defensive line has got some pieces to it.
They look all right.
I mean, they have some building blocks. I would not be in a hurry to get rid of Sam Darnold, but if you get the first pick, which they're not, I don't think they get the first pick. I mean, there's other teams that
he's going to need him for it.
Well, what's that?
Washington.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, Washington's got to win, but right now the O teams. I mean, the Texans, the Falcons. I mean, they've got a few teams that still haven't run a game yet. So it's like they might not have the first.
They're going to win. I think the Jets will be. I think they're going to get first pick. It's either them or the Giants. From what it looks like so far this year.
Yeah,
those teams are so hard to watch.
Well, and whoever gets it, you have to get Trevor Lawrence. Everyone's making him out to be kind of a once in a lifetime guy. So it's hard not to pass that. Hard not to pass that up. I mean, unless you get an insane package. If somebody offers you a bunch of picks, trade it. Whatever. But I would definitely be. Be taking Lawrence and moving on from Darnold. Darnold's a good quarterback, but he needs to change the scenery. He's had 3 different coordinators.
In maybe Pittsburgh, I wouldn't mind him going to New England, but it just seems like he's a guy that needs a good coaching staff around him. And those are some places that might not have a quarterback for the foreseeable future. I don't know what Cam's going to do after this year. He's probably going to want to get paid, and I don't know if New England would pay him.
After watching Hoyer and Stidham, I'd call New England. Well, we need to negotiate.
To be fair, Stidham got thrown in a terrible situation where he had to kind of throw deep balls. I feel like he'd be more interesting to see where he gets the start of the game, which we're going to see it this week. So I think he might be able to take control of the game. He can run. Stidham, they can run the same offense with Stidham because Stidham can run. They just can't do power runs on the 1 yard line with him. But I think if he doesn't have a situation where he's got to try and score in 2 to 3 minutes, he might be a little bit better than just trying to force the ball down the field to Demir Bird, which they did all game, which is annoying
Right.
too.
We really did.
Okay, so last question before we wrap up. Brendan over on YouTube is asking, is he crazy to start Gibson over Miles Sanders? So Gibson is facing the
Yes.
Rams and Sanders is facing the Steelers. Steelers have a pretty good defense. And obviously, Jay can tell us all about how bad Philly is right now. I don't know. Like I would be okay
Division
with
leaders.
it, but I'd probably still start Sanders just because he's the better athlete and the better player.
Pittsburgh's run defense is number one in the league.
Yeah.
That's
But
tough.
Sanders has tons of PPR back. Like he's going to get action. They're going to get him the
You
ball.
guys have no back out of the back that's worth anything besides him. He's your clear cut, every down kind of guy where Gibson comes out for McKissick. That's why I'm going to go with the guy that's on the field more and sees more volume personally. So,
As an Eagles fan, I'm just going to say if you were to throw in Gibson over Sanders just for this week, I wouldn't necessarily knock you for it. Because again, which I'm praying doesn't happen, but if the Eagles go down, yes, they'll be passing a lot and that'll be good for Sanders, but Wentz and Sanders' passing connection has not looked very good. And so that's just the only thing that where you really couldn't, I think you couldn't go wrong with starting either, but I could see someone absolutely making a case to start Gibson this week.
Yeah, because Kyle Allen is coming in first time of the season, really getting a lot of action. I'd probably still lean Sanders. But you could make the case that Gibson, they could lean on the running game to set up the pass while Allen's getting comfortable. I mean, I'm not really one to try to start anything on Washington's team except for McLaurin, and even that, like, I can't think of a place I own a McLaurin share because I don't trust this offense this year. So I go Miles Sanders.
And McLaurin's good. He's consistent. McLaurin's putting up consistent numbers. Yeah, I've got him on a few leagues, and I was nervous about getting him. And he's like my wide receiver 3 in all these leagues, and I couldn't be more happy about the way he
absolutely.
played.
I was wrong about him this year. Like I wasn't touching anything Washington in redraft this year, but he's definitely a playable option weekly, which is good. I mean, we gotta have something. So, all right. So we appreciate all you guys for hanging out with us and throwing all the good questions. Make sure you get to the Start Sit video that we post every Tuesday. Get your questions on there. We'll get them answered. The whole team talks about it, puts them together, votes on it. Then Friday, put it together. Our boy Jacob rubs some magic dust on it, and then we upload it to the YouTubes. So make sure you get on there, ask your questions, ask away, whatever you need. We're here to help. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you, Jacob, as always. It's great talking to you guys.
Thank
you guys for hanging out with us. We will talk to you